and protection of buildings, sites, structures, areas, and districts of historic significance and interest through the preservation and enhancement of local historic, architectural, archaeological, and aesthetic heritage found in the city, through the maintenance of the distinctive character of the city's historic districts, and through the promotion and enhancement of the city's historic and aesthetic attraction to tourists and visitors. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, now proceeding, I'd like to ask our other commissioners to introduce themselves. And this evening, I'll start from my left and go to my right.
Good evening, Vincent Hall.
Ella Martin.
Keelan Adams.
Carol King.
Kamala DeBartoleben.
Thank you very much. And again, we want to say good afternoon, everybody, and appreciate everybody coming out or tuning in to listen to our deliberations. To our other commissioners, you have in your package, or you should have received by email, the minutes of the February 11, 2025 meeting. The chair will now entertain a motion for the adoption of those minutes.
Dr. Bailey, can I make a correction?
Yes.
I'm not big in the thing, but I'm not a mister.
I can barely hear you.
I was just gonna, in the minutes, I'm a Mr. King. I don't really care what you put in, that there be something, but, you know, thank you.
When I saw that, I looked everywhere to see who Mr. King was.
Well, 100 years from now. Doesn't matter now, but 100 years from now.
I guess somebody was just trying to make sure we had a sense of humor.
Well, we'll make sure that we read them.
So we'll make the correction. That's what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll make the correction, and we'll change in section 7, Mr. King to Miss King.
Thank you.
All right. Any other corrections?
No.
All right. All those in favor of the minutes as written with that change, let it be known by a show of hands. Thank you very much. Motion carried. Okay. All right. And moving right along with our agenda, Sean, would you lead us on a discussion on the NAPC conference last year?
Yeah, so Warren and I presented at the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions biannual conference last year, discussing basically ongoing development plans and everything in the Montgomery portion of the Selma to Montgomery Trail. So that was a very, I think, impactful meeting and talk. We had a lot of good response to it, and folks asking questions and things like that as well. So it was a good talk, good presentation, and we would be looking forward to possibly going again at the next one. Maybe we can give some updates to the conference and basically keep Montgomery's presence at this event ongoing. So that would be just a general summary, and we can lead into the screening here. This is a recent NAPC webinar training. Carol mentioned that we may want to present some of that here, so I have a couple of snippets. It's a fairly lengthy talk overall. It is available if you all want to click the link. In your free time, you can certainly review the whole thing. But yeah, I think these sections are important. These talk about historic resource surveys, and we have more to say on that a little bit later on this agenda as well.
Okay, any comments, any feedback?
Sean, where's NAPC next?
Do you remember, Warren? I think Wisconsin, but I might get that wrong.
Okay.
They did announce the next location.
Okay, yeah.
Somewhere colder than Florida.
Yeah. Somewhere not close, okay.
Any other comments? Any question? Okay, everybody good to go. Sean, any concluding remarks, Sean?
That's all I had on that, but yeah, we'll just, we can do the screening here. So we'll go ahead with with that portion of the agenda.
Okay.
Webinar today, and with that, I think we are ready to get started officially with you, Chris.
All right, great. So I'm just going to talk about the basics of the historic property survey. And I think of historic property survey as really the essential building block for every project that a local preservation commission works on. So if we were to define what historic property survey is, I would call it the systematic, and systematic being a really important word there, the systematic process of identifying, describing, and documenting historic resources throughout the community. So this is often done on a template or form that's been created by your state historic preservation office. So you can see one of the forms right here that's been done for the state of Missouri. So surveying historic properties is all about knowing what kind of historic resources are present in your community. Really, I mentioned that building block, and I might even say the word building block a few times because it really is the foundation of everything that we do as local preservation commissions. So it's because I really feel like it's impossible really to be effective as a preservation commission unless you know what you have in your community. So surveying is really about that step of really identifying, describing, documenting, getting things together in a really organized fashion to know what you have in your community. If we were to say what are the basics of historic preservation planning, it would come down to 3 simple steps: identification, evaluation, and protection. So survey comes into that first one, identification, the surveying and documentation of historic resources. From that, once you have a good understanding of what you have in your community through a survey project, now you can really see the bigger picture. You have a much better sense of of the whole context of things, bigger picture of historic resources in your community. So you have a much better understanding of what stands out as significant. So that's that next part. It's almost like a funneling down of what's significant. And that's step number 2, evaluation. So once you have a better sense now of knowing what's significant, you can think about protecting historic resources, that 3rd step. And so when I think of protection, I think of all kinds of different tools. Regulatory tools, like local historic districts established through an ordinance or demolition delay. But I think of protection pretty broadly, so I think of all kinds of non-regulatory tools as well. Even things like community outreach, which we'll mention in a little bit as well. Those are protection tools as well because they generate lots of interest and sort of a community-wide sense of that there's value to these historic resources that we have in our community. So again, building block, all those protection strategies that are out there, they all go back to that first stage of knowing what you have in your community and doing that survey work. Important to note that surveying historic properties is not just about buildings. We really want to think about surveying all kinds of resources out there: bridges, burial grounds, landscapes, objects, structures, archaeological sites, all those things. Those are all historic properties that are worth trying to find out more information about, worth putting down on a piece of paper in terms of documenting them. So many states actually have a special form that's just for these different kinds of resources. So the one you see right here is Florida. They have a historic bridge form. That's just a form that you fill out only for the bridges. And so other states will have a variety of other kinds of forms based on the type of historic property that is being surveyed. I'm going to jump over to the benefits of historic property survey, and to me one of the big ones is community engagement and interest. So having good survey information about the historic resources in your community is a great way to generate community engagement and interest. So I have one of my favorite tools right there, the plaque program. Great way to generate lots of interest from property owners, lots of interest from residents, just by having these plaques placed on the houses in the village or around town. They get a lot of visibility that way, and they get a lot of pride. If you are a property owner with one of those plaques on your house, you have a lot of pride in being eligible for one of those plaques too. But you can't do a plaque program unless you have good survey ahead of time, because you've got to be able to know the, say, a good building date, construction date, and a good historic name as well. So all those things are going to come from the survey itself. Preservation planning, if you're thinking about doing a preservation plan in your community, you'll be much better prepared to consider how best to protect that which is significant when you have all those basics readily at hand. You have all those properties and a good context for understanding where we should put our time, where we should prioritize, how we should go about trying to save these properties that really stood out from our survey project. Likewise, if you are doing anything like a master plan, comprehensive plan, a neighborhood plan, downtown revitalization plan, historic resources will likely or really should be a part of that overall plan. And usually if it's a master plan, you have a whole chapter or element that's just on historic resources. And if you already have good survey ahead of time, you're going to be much more effective at incorporating historic preservation into your community's planning process. Individuals to direct and conduct a comprehensive statewide survey of historic properties and maintain inventories of such properties. So there it is, the idea that national policy, this idea of actually really going out and documenting historic resources in all our cities and towns. I'm going to do a few slides now just on the types of historic properties survey that are out there. There may be some other ways to think about what types of historic property survey are, but these are the basic ideas here. The first one is really basic. It's often called a windshield survey, and it's kind of what you can imagine. It's what information can we collect about historic resources if we were just driving by? And the answer to that would be not very much, but it would give you an overall indication of the resources present in an area. So an advantage of a windshield survey, well, it's really quick, very, very quick process. Disadvantage, of course, is that you're not getting very much information at all just by doing this. But it's a good start in terms of knowing what kinds of things you might want to head towards for additional survey. Reconnaissance survey is that next level. You can think of reconnaissance survey maybe as what information could we collect about historic resources if we were walking by slowly? So we could get things like a photograph, the location, the type of historic resource, an architectural style, the date of construction just by a visual assessment, the condition of the property, the use of the property currently, and we might be able to get some idea of should we follow up with some more survey on this property at a later time. So advantage here again, it's quick. Very quick process. Disadvantage, you get more information than a windshield survey, but not that much more. Intensive survey is really, if we were to say, if we were a detective, what kind of information could we collect about this resource? So here we're going to have a really in-depth information on each resource. We're going to photo document it. We're going to have a very detailed historical narrative. We're going to have an architectural description that describes everything on, say, a building from the foundation up to the roof. There's going to be probably some GPS mapping that takes place there as well. And we're going to collect a lot of information from things like doing deed research, looking at census records, looking at city directories, municipal records, historic maps and atlases, lots and lots of materials that we could use to research a property. Advantage here, of course, is that there's a substantial amount of information. You really have a great, really detailed information on each property. Disadvantage, though, is that it's very time consuming. And I could say also a lot more expensive, just because of the time it takes to put an intensive survey together. An area survey is kind of like a mix between the reconnaissance and the retentive survey. It's used when various historic properties are a piece of a bigger story. So if we were to think about this mill complex right here, this cutlery factory, there's about 6 buildings on this property, and also some structures. There's the dam, there's there's some archaeological resources for some buildings that got demolished here. There's all kinds of buildings in terms of one where they made the handles, and one where they were cutting the knives themselves. We could think about doing an intensive survey on each one of these buildings individually, and yet these buildings all relate to the manufacture of cutlery. And that means that it kind of makes sense to actually do an area survey and have a detailed historical narrative that tells the whole story about these properties, not individually. It recognizes that they all relate so much to each other that we really need to tell a story about this whole place itself. So sometimes area surveys are done for things like villages, neighborhoods, if they sort of have especially if it's a neighborhood that developed all around the same time, it might make sense to do an area survey as well. I've worked with lots of commissions over the years that focus just within their historic district that's covered by their local ordinance. And I find that they often forget about all the properties that are not within their historic district boundary. So a rural survey is one way to think about how you can really survey all those properties that are really far apart, just by themselves, but are really significant properties as well, and really should be surveyed. Thematic surveys are the ones that focus on a particular type of resource. Architect, style, period, meant something like that. So think about maybe a thematic survey could be just on lighthouses, or maybe one just on diners. Or I was in Alabama a little over a year ago, and was on the Selma to Montgomery trail. And I don't know, maybe if anybody's here from Alabama, maybe you can tell me if there's already a thematic survey for all of the resources along that route. But that would be a logical place to have a thematic survey as well. There's also archaeological surveys. So you could think about an archaeological survey, meaning it could be a site that clearly has below ground resources. Or you could also think about archaeological reconnaissance surveys, which are actually done kind of remotely. These could be done mostly through mapping, and it's really trying to find that place where maybe where an indigenous settlement likely was, based on access to water, based on quality of the soils for agriculture, based on transportation routes, things like that. So that reconnaissance survey could really help to think about how certain areas should be protected, not because we know there are archaeological resources there, but because there might be, based on these logical factors.
All right, those are the 2 clips that I think are most impactful that I wanted to share with you all. Again, you can view the full recording if you would like. It goes into a bunch more detail, and there's, I think, 2 other speakers on that particular webinar. But I just wanted to emphasize surveys as, the basis of what we do in historic preservation. And if you all have any thoughts, happy to discuss a little further here.
Any thoughts? Anyone?
I just thought they did a good job of outlining all the different types of survey work, not just the street survey work that we're familiar with, but other types of things, especially around here with the thematic, you know, or churches or gardens, or there's another way to do it, not other than just the door-to-door houses type of survey.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes.
Something. If we were to do something like that, what do you think the approach would be? Would you think that, I mean, because I watched like almost all of it, and when it was very in depth, but it's like you said, it's a lot of work. It's a whole lot. So do you think that maybe in the future we could create something, maybe a department within the HBC to be able to at least kind of move in that direction? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and so this is it's a good question. That's really what I'm hoping to be able to establish a designation committee here this evening, so that we can begin this kind of work. I have some thoughts on priorities, that ways that we can prioritize things that we think are achievable. The thematic study, I kind of look at that as like a longer term, thing a little bit down the road, just because we have some kind of things that I would say are like a higher priority right now. But yeah, it's something that I definitely would be interested to get involved with, on a thematic basis. And, as they mentioned briefly in there as well, things like preservation plans, that doesn't, I don't believe that we really have one. So this body is essentially, who would be responsible for that, for a preservation plan. So we can get into that as well after we get a few things, accomplished. I think that a longer-term preservation planning angle will be a great thing for the city, and it's something that would help guide us in our activities as we move forward.
Anyone else? Yes.
So, Sean, what do we have to start working with that's just kind of, I guess, generic that we can start with?
Yeah, so we do have the next two items here on the agenda are an education committee in order to start doing educational work in communities in the city to help people understand what historic preservation is. So I think that's going to be a critical component so that we can help to maybe educate where there might be misinformation that people may have. So that'll be a key component. And then as far as the designation committee and activities, I think Warren can speak a little bit more to something that happened at City Council last week, I believe, where there was a National Register property that was on the demolition list, and it sort of fell through the radar. I saw the list, but didn't actually recognize that it was a National Register property. That's not, what I deal with day to day. So that is the top of my priority list, is to literally compare what's on the National Register to what we have on the local register, and perhaps pursue local designation for those properties. So I think that's an achievable goal, and I've started a list in the office. So I think that's the first kind of big glaring thing that we can work on, and possibly get a few designations completed, for properties that are already on the National Register, but are not on the local register.
Yeah, the property that was on the demolition list was the Up House. It's on the National Register. And one of the things we noticed was that our locally designated historic properties are flagged on capture, which is really our system where we monitor development plans, demolitions, building permits. But we found out that the National Register properties were not flagged. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that all the National Register properties are flagged as well. For two reasons. One, because obviously they should be, but two, it means we don't end up in situations like we did where I had to get up and say, whoa, hang on a minute, this is a National Register property. So we bought it some time, but the problem we have is if the building official determines a building is dangerous, his requirement to have the building torn down trumps any sort of historic designation. So I did reach out to the Historical Commission. They seem to be aware that this property has been in some distress for many, many years. This isn't something that has just happened. So it looks as if we are going to lose it because it's dangerous, but we certainly want to avoid situations like that coming up in the future where it's sort of being discussed in public at the last minute. You know, if these properties were flagged, this could all have been discussed prior to it coming before the City Council. So that's one thing that we need to address immediately.
Is there a way, we were kind of looking at it one way, that way, but is there a backwards way? In other words, is there a way to amend the ordinance or amend the designation process so that if it's put on the National Register, we would automatically vote on it for local designation?
That's something I've always felt should be.
Yeah, we talked about it the other way.
Yeah, I've certainly worked in municipalities where one of the criteria to be in the local register is it is on the National Register. That keeps it real simple.
And then it comes under the design review.
Yeah.
That's what you want it to do. And it's sort of like, we always look at it, well, if you get the local designation, then you do the National Register district part. But would it like almost automatically go on local designation, come up for a quick vote and be?
Yeah, because if something has national significance, it's pretty likely it's got local significance.
Yeah, and I do have as well, just to add to that, I have a running list of potential historic ordinance updates that we can add into the code. This is just a running list, you know, as I find things, you know, that are like, okay, why is this, you know, done this way? And I'm pretty sure I have that on there about, you know, the
auto.
Yeah, just being, you know, qualified in there automatically for the local. And I believe the state does that too, that if they add it to the National Register, then it's on the state.
It may now, but I know there's, at least in Montgomery, I think there's a fair amount of National Registers that aren't on the Alabama Register. But then, see, like Centennial Hills just gotten its National Register. So, you know, a quick vote, the survey work's already been done. Quick vote, and it's a local designation and comes under design review quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
And that's ultimately, I think you mentioned that, Carol, that, once we get it onto the local register, then you have the design review protections so that, you know, hopefully we can stop the, you know, property becoming distressed and, you know, ending up with an unsafe designation and being demolished, you know, and things like that, so.
And I think as well that so many things in the city at the moment are starting to progress. We're getting a new zoning code. You're getting new design guidelines. I believe the bylaws are they coming up tonight, the bylaws?
That's right.
Yeah. So it sort of makes sense that you consider updating the code and getting a preservation plan in place and starting to look at those areas which we feel may have some significance. Because at the moment, there's quite a lot of demolition going on in the city, and we are losing a lot. And to be fair, a lot of these properties are in a dangerous condition. But, you know, certainly documenting them before they come down, keeping a record of what we had. And with all the other new plans and everything coming into force in the new zoning code, it makes sense that the historic regulations and bylaws and design guidelines keep up to speed with that so that everything works in tandem. And so, as Sean was saying, these are all things that I think we should be considering moving forward. And I think that's why Sean's bringing these things up now.
Okay, anyone else? All right. Okay, let's move on. Establishment of an education committee.
So, yeah, they wanted to go ahead with this. I have a couple of suggested members. That would be, now you all can sort of volunteer or decline or whatever the case may be, but you're sort of being voluntold at this point. That would be Vincent, Camilla, and then Keelan. So we need 3 members to form this committee, and then a leading member as well. So what I'm thinking with this is to have us meet on a regular basis outside of the HPC meeting. In my office makes the most sense. I have a lot of materials already that we can sort of work from and discuss plans and coordinate, educational activities for the board. So we will meet, outside of the regular meetings, discuss things, and then come back to the full board meeting, and that way we can coordinate everything and move forward. So those are my thoughts. If you all have questions or anything, certainly open to feedback.
Okay, are y'all comfortable with that?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah, I was actually going to volunteer for it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
okay with me as well.
You comfortable? Okay, good enough. Thank you, Sean. Okay. Any comments or whatever regarding the membership of the Education Committee? All right. Thank you very much.
Can we, so Dr. Baylor, can we just, I think it'd be best if we have the board pass a motion to
Okay.
form the committee, with these stated members. And if someone would, as well volunteer to be the lead member, that would be helpful as well.
Okay, the chair will now entertain such a motion.
I move we establish an education committee consisting of Vincent Hall, Keelan Adams, and Camilla DeBartolome.
Okay. Second. Been moving properly. Second. Any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Okay, all right, good enough. Number 4, continue discussion of the last meeting regarding the state of historic preservation in the city of Montgomery, establishment of a designation committee.
All right, and so with this one, I just had some notes that I pasted into the agenda here. I've shown you all this before. These are really the powers and duties of the board, and I highlighted the kind of most important salient aspects. We talked about surveying, maintaining an inventory. That's one of the main things that I've been working on since I started in this role, is really tightening up the inventory and getting things in line, just clearing things up. So maintaining that inventory is one of the biggest things that we do. And then recommending to the mayor and city council specific buildings, et cetera, for designation. So that's what the sort of purpose of this designation committee will be, is to do research, outreach, and all the activities that we need. That includes surveying the properties in order to recommend designation. So that recommendation then goes to city council for their action. And then we also have number 7 here, develop and conduct educational programs. So that was the prior item on the agenda. So we do have that piece as well in order to educate folks and let people know what this is all about. So I think that these 2 committees will sort of be integral as we move forward in this process, and we seek to nominate additional buildings that we feel are important in the history of Montgomery. And then number 11, we have investigate, survey, and process nominations to the National Register. So we do have the ability to comment on those that come to us for a National Register nomination as well. We did a few of those last year for Peacock Tract and for Centennial Hill. So that's another vital aspect of the Historic Preservation Commission. So just wanted to talk through some of those details on the powers and duties and give you all just kind of the context of what these committees will be working on. And, I'm happy to collaborate on that and, and we can just move forward with that understanding. And then moving on to the next page here, this was really, wanted to discuss this in the context of our last meeting where some members expressed, concern about demolitions and being able to review things prior to a demolition happening. And Warren and I discussed it a little bit further in the office, and we really think that increasing our designations is going to be one of the key factors here, because as part of the existing code, anything that is on the list of properties that are locally designated has a design review. They cannot be demolished without going through the ARB. As Warren mentioned, the building official sort of has veto power basically. If something is unsafe, we don't want to keep that. We want to go ahead and get rid of that if it's unsafe. But again, another part of the whole thing here that we're doing is to provide what is called demolition by neglect, or protection against demolition by neglect. So if something is in a deteriorating state, that's part of my job is to go out and cite that as a violation. So we really think that adding to the list and designating more places is going to be a key factor to provide these protections to more properties. There have not been very many designations lately, and so we want to, now that we have things moving forward, we want to get the ball rolling on some of this. And I firmly believe that once we get some momentum going, we get some things accomplished, that there will be more excitement happening. We'll have people calling us, wanting to get involved, and so that's kind of what I think will transpire. So then down to the next page, let me click forward here, is going to be the designation committee. Again, we need 3 members for that. My suggested members, Brennan texted me and said that he would be interested. He couldn't make it here today. His son had a health problem, but he expressed interest in the designation committee. And then my other suggestion would be Carol and Dr. Robinson. If you all are not interested or want another member to participate, you can certainly suggest that as well. Happy to accommodate other people who want to be on the committee. So those would be my suggestions, and then I have a priority list. So if we want to discuss the membership of the committee, we can do that, and then I'll kind of walk through some of the priorities here.
Okay, all right. The chair will now entertain a motion regarding the membership of the designation committee. Is there a motion?
No, we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't nominate ourselves. We shouldn't nominate ourselves.
I know it. But that's not everybody on the commission, though.
I make a motion that the designation committee be established with Dr. Bailey, Carol King, and Brandon Parker.
Okay, all right. We're not nominating ourselves. Okay, all right. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, second. Any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Motion carried. Thank you very much. And Sean, your office will be open. Okay.
Yeah, and I think we can sort of talk about, scheduling. What I was looking at on the calendar would be kind of the 3rd and 4th Tuesdays and Thursdays of each month. I'm open generally 10 to 11 or 2 to 3, so we can kind of talk through that now or after the meeting or whatever's best for you all. And just to make sure that I got this, so we have, that was Carol, Dr. Bailey, and who was the third member?
Brandon?
Brennan.
Dr.
Okay.
Robinson.
It was the motion was different than what than his recommendation.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
I thought he said Brandon had volunteered to do it.
Yeah, Brennan did.
Right, but instead of Dr. Bailey, she said Dr. Robinson.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Can I amend my motion then to include Dr. Robinson, Dr. Bailey, and Carol King to be on the designation committee?
Okay.
Okay, well, unless, yeah, it would be the people who I would, was suggesting was Brennan, Dr. Robinson, and who was the third?
Me.
Yeah, and Carol, that's right.
Right, and Carol King.
Right,
Is that correct?
that's right.
Robertson, King, and
Brandon,
Brandon.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
somebody else amend it then.
Okay.
I'm very confused.
We can go with that. Anybody dissatisfied? Anybody uncomfortable? Anybody got a question? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Continued discussion regarding Section 106 consultation related to the Montgomery Housing Authority's planned Parks Place Community Parking Lot Project.
All right, so at the last meeting, we talked a little bit about this. This is a Housing Authority parking lot project, and we have a couple folks here from the Housing Authority, which I'll give a moment to speak on this. The main update that I have is that myself and Mr. Paul Van Fleet in the office worked on getting an invitation letter to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. This was required by the regulations for Section 106, so it is to invite the Advisory Council. Usually they decline, and with it being just a parking lot project, I think that they will decline to participate, but it is a requirement to invite them basically to be a consulting party. So that's basically the major update that we have right now. That letter went out, I think, last week or the week before. And so that's the main update, and I just wanted to give the folks here a moment to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about the project.
Please speak directly into the microphone.
Right.
Thank you. How
Good
you
evening.
doing?
I'm well. How you all doing?
Okay. Give us your name first of all.
Jelani Moore, and I'm the real estate project manager for the Montgomery Housing Authority.
And I'm Crystalline Moore. I'm the Director of Human Resources at the Montgomery Housing Authority.
Okay, good.
Ms. Moore was here during our last meeting. I was not. I've been out on leave for the past 2 months, but I just wanted to formally introduce myself now that I'm back working on this project. As I understand, the board may have had some questions. We can answer those questions right now if you want.
Well, I think our main question was a drawing.
A drawing of the parking lots?
A drawing, a sketch of the layout.
The layout, okay. We can provide some preliminary sketches. We did not bring those today, but as far as the number of parking lots we are looking to fit on the lots in question, our architect has estimated that we can fit about 50 to 55. But the reason for this is because there are currently 150 dwelling units at the Parks Place community. We only have 98 parking places. And so we'd like to get at least to a 1-to-1 ratio, whereby each dwelling unit will have its own designated parking place. The addition of these 50 to 55 parking lots will get us to that level.
Any other question, comment? Anyone?
Well, just that.
Any other question, comment? Anyone?
Well, just that we wanted to see exactly where it was going to wrap around or whatever. That was really what we had talked about last time. How it would affect the streetscape of Rosa Parks Avenue / Cleveland Avenue.
Okay.
You know how it would
ma'am.
affect it, because then there was discussion of the club across the street too.
Yes, yes. I was unaware of what all you wanted to see today, but as far as when we come back for the next meeting, I'll be glad to present that.
Sean, Warren, do either one of you have any comments?
Yeah, just that we're kind of still in the early phases. That, you know, they have the environmental review process. That's what the Section 106 comes under. And so, but yeah, we will definitely, I'll take a note that you all would like to see sort of drawings of what it'll look like. And we're working through basically the outcome of this will be a memorandum of understanding or agreement, MOA, with mitigation actions. The consultant, the cultural resource consultant, found that there will be an adverse effect. So that based on the regulations, that typically requires a negotiated MOA. So we will have actions in that MOA that mitigate or address the adverse effect. So these couple of meetings here have just been sort of to let you all know that this is ongoing. But yeah, still in the early phases, so we'll certainly come back in order to present the MOA when it's more into a draft form, and once we have that, then we can sort of look at drawings and everything as well, because I don't think that, like Jelani said, I think it's still sort of in a sketch phase, so we don't have I don't think that we have like full-blown drawings as of yet.
Not rendering it, no.
Let me ask you one question. Have you, either one of you, had any kind of communication with the people in the neighborhood?
As far as like the neighbors?
Pro or con?
Public meeting.
Public meeting, if you will, yes.
Oh, like a public hearing. We've had resident meetings with the Parks Place residents to discuss what it is we're planning to do. Not just Parks Place, but also all of MHA as well, but mostly Parks Place because it's affecting them the most.
And what was the outcome?
Everybody's elated. They want parking spaces.
When was that meeting?
Well, we've had several. Our PHA planning period ran from late July to November, and during that time, we go to each site and present what our plan is in the next year and also our 5-year plan. So we would have met with Parks Place sometime in August to discuss this, and we would have showed them what we were planning.
Right. And my final question is, do you, in the back of your head or at the basis for your planning, do you feel that you're doing a basic good for the neighborhood? Do you think it really benefits the neighborhood, what you're doing?
Absolutely.
You do?
The whole neighborhood.
The whole neighborhood.
The whole community.
Whole community then.
Absolutely.
You do? Okay, just asking. Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Right now, those lots sit vacant. They're absentee landowners. They're overrun a lot of times and trashy, not cut properly.
Right.
Last time I checked, there was a car parked there that was not operable. At the very least, we're making the property functional rather than void and becoming an attractant for undesirable activities.
I have a question.
Yes, question.
When you're going into the entrance of, I keep wanting to say Cleveland Court, what's the new name?
Parks Place.
Parks Place. The lots that you want to use, are they over to the right? There's like 2 vacant lots. There were 2 houses there and they were torn down. I grew up in that neighborhood, so I know exactly.
Right, yeah. So they're to the right. Before you enter the actual property and like go past the gate, on the outside of it, those lots that stretch up towards, I believe,
It's
Bullock.
like, it was like 2 or 3 houses right there, and each one, they've been demolished.
Oh, yes. The lots are clear. There's nothing in the lots.
That's the lots I thought you were talking about. Because I grew up right there on Wayne Street. My granddad lived on Wayne Street, so I remember those houses.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's what we sort of wanted to see the clarity of, because then someone had said it was basically going along Rosa Parks, the front part, the land between the housing and the street itself, which is green space at this point.
It's green space.
So we just wanted to see exactly what you're talking about. That will be done, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, it probably will be better being a parking lot than what it's going on right there at the present. I think.
Any other comments?
I have one.
Yes,
I have
go
one
ahead.
question. So so those are the lots across from the Elks Club? The ones
Yes,
you're
sir.
talking about? Is it going to impact, when the Elks, when they have their functions on the weekends or whatever, will there be, you anticipate any traffic congestions or any conflict with the Elks in parking?
No, we do not anticipate that. This is not street parking or anything like that. It'll be a fenced-in parking lot. People will go in, park, and go to their units. I don't think it would necessarily affect the Elks Lodge at all. But absolutely, we can, talk to them and bring them into the discussion to see what they have to say about it. But no, I do not think it would have an adverse effect on the Elks Lodge.
Okay, because I was just asking, sometimes if people are going to the Elks, they can't find parking, will they be able to park in the designated park apartments parking lot? But that's not a possibility, is it?
Well, perhaps not at this time. And
Okay.
so I should say this is a drop in the bucket. Those 98 parking lots that I was referring to earlier, which of course puts us at a 52 lot deficit, that also includes where employees park and where contractors park. And as you know, Rosa Parks' unit is in there. That's on the National Historic Registry. Visitors from all over the world come in every week to visit that unit. So this is the beginning of something that we want to eventually expand and add more parking, because also the church at the bottom of the neighborhood, just across the street, I forget the name of that church, they also talking about a parking shortage. So yeah, there are many organizations in that area that talk about a parking shortage. This one in the beginning would be for Parks Place, but there are other lots that we're looking at to acquire to build parking as well, by which other communities, other organizations in the area would be able to utilize those.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And like Ms. DeBartolome, I still live in the area, so I don't want it to be, just sort of anticipate, again, where people who are going to the Elks can't find a place to park. But if those spaces are designated just for their apartments, then I think that would mitigate the possibility of that happening.
So is the access or easement to the parking that you're proposing, is that still coming through that one gate?
No.
Okay, so there's going to be another access point?
Yes, sir.
On Rosa Parks or the perpendicular street, whatever?
Columbia? Is it Columbia?
Bullock?
Bullock.
Right now, yeah, I think that's Bullock to the north. Right now, we're looked at just on Rosa Parks, but of course, like I said, we're in the preliminary stage. The architect might find that it'd be better to put it perhaps at Bullock. We did look at kind of a one-way entrance, one-way exit situation, but as far as what we have right now, we've just been looking at the entrance on Rosa Parks.
Just Rosa Parks.
Just Rosa Parks currently, yes.
The reason I ask is really a corollary to the question that previously discussed in terms of the facility across the street. And access on Rosa Parks makes it convenient parking for that facility as opposed to the residents of Parks Place, as opposed to like where you come in now, you're coming into the apartment complex.
Correct.
As opposed to an access point on Rosa Parks where you would, it's right across, that's the easiest place to park, or the most convenient place to park if you were going across the street to the Elks Lodge.
Right. Well, and again, when we provide schematics, this will be easier to explain. What we're looking at right now is that, yes, you would pull your vehicle into the parking lot off of Rosa Parks, but there'll be a pedestrian fence that leads right into, a walkway and pedestrian fence that leads into the Rosa Parks property. So you wouldn't have to I guess you could use the sidewalk if you wanted to, but for people parking in that parking lot, there'll be a designated entrance on the property.
Okay, anyone else?
And final question, will there be other community meetings prior to, like anytime soon, next month a quarterly for the community to voice their opinions going forward?
We do not have anything currently scheduled like that, no.
Okay.
Okay, I think what he was trying to say about the parking, he was basically trying to ask you how you're gonna eliminate the people using your residents' parking from the people that's going to the Elks Club.
Gated access, key card entry.
Okay, that's what I said. Okay, thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Anyone else? Question, comment? Thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.
Please come again, even if you just want to sit in on our meetings.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Proposed update to the HPC bylaws, Sean?
All right, this is carried over from the last meeting, so wanted to go ahead with it, with an update. If you all have anything that you've seen that you would like changed, certainly let us know. But yeah, we have, I believe it's got red lines for where the updates have happened, so you all can see that, and yeah, we'll go from there. If you have any discussion, yeah, we can go from there, or we can go ahead with the motion, whatever you would like to do.
I think you filled in all our, all our suggestions or whatever. We've added all our comments.
And as far as the voting goes, instead of requiring 5 votes, it would be a majority of the members present, as long as there's a minimum of 5 with a quorum. We are doing this for all of our boards where we can. The only one we can't do it for is Board of Adjustment, but Historic Architectural Review Board, Planning Commission, and one of the reasons for this is it doesn't really happen at this board so much, but basically if someone was turning up at, say, Planning Commission with an application and there were only 5 members there, they're relying on all 5 members voting in their favour, and they're really given the choice of, do we roll the dice and hope we get 5 votes, or do we just delay our application and come back next month and hopefully there'll be more board members there. To us this didn't really seem very efficient or fair, and so now you must have 5 members for a quorum, but basically a 3-2 vote will carry a motion instead of requiring all 5. Doesn't really affect this board as much as, you know, other boards, but we just want to keep them consistent.
Comments? Anyone? Is there anything you're uncomfortable with? Go right ahead.
A bylaw change, does it have to be introduced the meeting before it's actually voted on? The only reason I say that is if there's a change that might not be popular, and you notice that there's only a few members of the board here, and you wish to introduce that bylaw at a time that's favorable to you because of the limited number of people.
Okay.
So it seems to me that it might be more effective that it at least be introduced the meeting before, and then voted on the next meeting.
Sean, do we have a regulation on that?
As far as I know, there's not. I do see the point that you're making, but I have the last page pulled up here on the screen, and I mean, basically this just is the article about adoption of the bylaws. So effective upon passage, approval, and publication as provided by law. So I did include it on our legal notice as part of this meeting agenda, and we did have this. I mean, so that actually technically has happened in this case because it was on the prior meeting agenda, and this was carried over. So we have actually, put it on the prior meeting, and now we're doing a vote. So that actually has happened in this case, but I don't think that there is a requirement for it. So, yeah, I don't think that there is. It's basically by motion of the board. There's no requirement for like council or anything like that. So that in contrast to a historic ordinance update, that would, like you all would do a motion to recommend, and then that would go to council because they're the ones that would update the city ordinance. But this is effectively just the bylaws of how the board operates. It's updated by motion of the board, essentially. So,
could you go back to the previous screen?
Okay.
Before the signature block, the screen before the signature block, because right here, notice failure and alternative method of notification. There was one we had on the screen at the bottom, I think it had something to do with tenure. It said that the chairman, if it had to do with attendance, the chairman would may notify a member if that member does not attend 50%
Page 2.
of the meetings, I believe it's, yes, at the attendance. And my only question is, what if the chairman does not notify that member? In other words, can that member just go in and serve just because the chairman did not take it upon him or herself to notify that person? In other words, if that chairman and that person were friends, this is what I'm driving at.
Okay.
Just a question, but is it not the case that if a member does not attend the required amount of meetings, then staff prepare a letter for the chairman to sign, informing them that they're no longer on the board? So effectively it would be monitored by staff, but the chair would actually sign the letter that goes to them, I believe is how we did it recently.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I would be the one basically preparing, a letter if it comes to that. But it does say here in this, in number 6 on this page about there being a majority of the members of the board, passing that motion basically. So if the majority of the members, think that this is an issue and they pass a motion, at that point then the chair may request a member not attending 50% or more to resign. So it's actually at the will of the board. The chair is sort of just the person that's, in authority, and would be the one who would send a letter. Now we as staff, we staff the board, so we would draft the letter. Basically the board would have to vote on it first, get the consensus of everyone.
Sure.
And then we would draft a letter and then bring it to the chair to have you sign, and then we would send that effectively to the member in question.
Good enough. Okay. Any comments? All right. Thank you very much. So we're good to go with the proposed updates to the HPC bylaws. Okay.
One comment, if I can find it here quickly, that I wanted to bring to you all's attention. Let me find it here real quick. On page number 4, let me get there. So I did want to bring this up and kind of get your opinion on this under item number 2 here for, this is the procedures for historic designation. Recently, we removed the 75% owner consent requirement in order to more closely align with the state enabling legislation. That was done in order to achieve certified local government status in about 2020 or 2021. So what we have found, though, is that there is still a requirement here. So 2A is for submissions for historic designation of an individual property, it must have the owner's consent in writing. So basically my question to the board is, do you all think that that's okay? Do we want to keep that? Do you want to entertain possibly removing that? Or how do you feel about it?
Comments? reaction, response? How do you feel? Should we keep it? Change it?
Because first of all, it can't be commercial, correct?
It can be
It just
a
says
commercial
individual.
property. So I've added the red line here is, before it was just the individual property must have the property owner's consent. I've added in the next line about if it's owned by a business or an LLC or something, then we would ask for the consent of a principal officer, someone identifying themselves as representing the business entity, or nonprofit could be another case. So I've added that in, but yeah, that's, this is essentially just for individual properties. Historic preservation commissions, not just in the South, but really across the country, have kind of wrestled with this conundrum where we consider the historicity of a certain building, but we also, should understand property owners' rights.
Right.
That part makes sense. But it's that I just did want to bring it up and have an open discussion about it, because we removed the piece about a district, but it still has this this in here about an individual property. I'm fine either way. To me, makes sense. It's really what you all want to do. I think we can still require consent as a policy of the board, but we sort of don't want consent of the owner to be a criteria of designation. Like if a place is historic, I think that we should be able to say that, right? Regardless of whether the owner, agrees with that or not, or if they, So it is a sort of hard problem that, needs consideration.
Has there been litigation around that?
I was gonna say,
I'm thinking.
What would legal say?
Say it again?
What would legal say?
Right, because if designation comes with certain restrictions that the owner may object to,
Right.
and then we can designate despite his or her objections. It seems like that would have come up.
I've worked in municipalities where owner consent was required and owner consent was not required. When it's not required, technically you're moving ahead purely on the basis of the historic value or significance of the site or the property. It can lead to legal challenges, but it really depends what your code says. If your code allows that procedure, then you're really, really covered by the code. And there are advantages and disadvantages in both. By doing it without the owner's consent, it can lead to bad feeling, mistrust. Why are they doing this? But by waiting for owner consent, you could write 10 designation reports and have 10 go nowhere because the owner just says, no, I don't want it. So it's a very tricky balance.
Okay.
Does the Montgomery Code speak to this?
Yeah, I'm bringing that up here now so I can see what specifically it says. Yeah, I don't believe that it has a requirement for consent. That was the piece I mentioned that we removed. It did previously say that you required 75% of the owner consent for a neighborhood, for a district. Let me just look through this here a few moments. So it does say that the commission shall hold a public hearing. Notice of the hearing shall be published in 2 consecutive issues of a newspaper of local circulation. And then in addition to the notice of public hearing, written notice of the hearing shall be mailed by the commission to the owner as identified on the county property tax rolls. So we will send notice in the mail as well as in the newspaper for any potential designation. So in my view, that covers us for the owner aspect, that we do provide written notice that we're going to have a public hearing, and if a person wanted to oppose it, they could turn up to the public hearing. So in my view, that does sort of cover that aspect.
That's true.
Okay, anyone else?
Just a quick question. When you notify the owner, is that via certified mail?
Let me see. I don't think it specifies. Let me go back to it here. It does not specify. It does not. It just says that it gives a time frame that the notice shall be mailed not less than 10 nor more than 20 days prior to the date of the public hearing.
I think to cover ourselves, we would send it certified mail. It's a historic designation. We want to make sure the owner is informed, so it wouldn't serve us any purpose to not send it by certified mail so that we have a record that it was sent, and we hopefully have some sort of proof that the owner signed for it and received it. So even though it's not required, we more than likely would.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Are we covering the bases? Sean, are we covering the bases?
Yeah, I think if we just, sort of get the feeling of what you all want as far as this item 2A, we can, do a motion to approve the bylaws as we put them in here, or if you all wanted to remove this part about the owner consent in writing, then you all can do a motion subject to removing that part of the bylaws.
Okay.
Just something to consider. I mean, now that I'm looking through this, these procedures should really be dealt with in the code, because your bylaws have absolutely no legal standing as far as the public are concerned, I don't believe. These are bylaws for you. So the code is really the legal document that directs how you make applications, how you review them, what the deadlines are. So even though that's in there, it's really the code that has the authority.
Okay.
So even if we accept this language, then there has to be a subsequent adjustment to the code to correspond to it, right?
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying if it come down to a legal argument from someone, it's the code that is the legal authority. And as Sean had said, the code is due for updating anyway. So basically what you have in front of you is nothing is changing apart from the font in red. Everything remains exactly as it was, as it has been for a number of years.
So I think to, add to Warren's comment there, basically, if we, and this is the feeling, depends on the feeling of the board, if we want to more closely align with what the code says, then, this piece about the owner consent is really superfluous. It's in addition to what the code says, and, as Warren said, that's really the legal authority for designation. It is outlined in the city code, and so that's kind of where we are with it. If you all wanted to remove this section, we can certainly do that, and that would be fine, and we can adopt it as amended.
Comment.
And again, I do think it's important, as the Historic Preservation Commission, you can suggest amendments to the code as well. So if you feel strongly that owner consent should be required, that could be added to the code. It really comes down to what the board feels about whether you believe owner consent for designation should be required or should it not. And it's a tricky decision to make.
But I also think it's just for individual property designations. It's not when you're dealing with the whole district, where you're dealing with all these different people with different opinions. It's just for one person, one property owner, and one particular situation. So,
Sean, let me just ask you this: as far as the city of Montgomery is concerned, don't the two of you feel, Warren, that we have positioned ourselves so that we are armed for any kind of legal twisting that somebody might engage in?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Based on, if we're following the code, which we do, that's, we always do that, then I think we do have a defensible ground if any issues, turn up. But yeah, in the code, under historic designation, it does require the notice of the public hearing in the newspaper, and then an actual letter to the owner of record. And so in my view, that's sufficient notice. Some folks might not feel like that. They may want to be considered as far as themselves being the property owner. But from my perspective, the historic resources go beyond private property ownership. Like, some people, again, might disagree with that statement, but that's how I feel about it, that we're here to try and protect these buildings that, sometimes fall on hard times, or, people abandon them and things like that. So that's kind of what, how I look at it, is that we're looking out for these resources that need help. And so, as Warren said, like, kind of waiting around on an owner to consent for something, it may never get designated if that's the case. And again, we did remove the consent, requirement for districts. That part, it's my understanding, was not in the state enabling legislation. It went above and beyond state law. And so the Historic Commission basically told us that if we wanted to be a certified local government, we had to take that piece out. And so that was removed. And so, yeah, some people would look at that and say, oh, that's not good. You're removing, something to where we can voice our, opinion or whatever it is. But again, we, as a requirement for a district or an individual property, we have a public hearing. That's what this board is here for. This is a public forum, and so in my view, that is sufficient. Like, if someone feels strongly enough, they can turn up to the public hearing and express that opposition.
And 75% is 75%.
Right. I mean, that was what the requirement was at the time for a neighborhood, for a district. But then, yeah, so that piece is removed now. It is no longer involved. And that's why I wanted to bring this section to you all's attention, because it is still here in the bylaws regarding an individual property. But yeah, it's not in the code, basically. It doesn't have that as a requirement.
Okay. Let's hear from the other commissioners.
And just to have you to state this again, is it clause C that is not a requirement, like regarding the 75%?
Okay, so clause C, 2C, is referring to a district. So,
district, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so this part was, so when we removed the owner consent of a neighborhood or a district, this part was added in as a way to provide, public deliberation. That's what this is. So
Okay.
say that we have a neighborhood and there's significant opposition, right? We're pursuing it. We think that it's, eligible. We think it meets the criteria to be designated, but then the neighborhood has 50% plus one of the owners who expressed their opposition in writing, then this clause comes into play. So what that says is that the HPC will hear testimony at the public hearing. Even with that, though, you'll see the last sentence. Nevertheless, even if these folks express opposition, you all may still recommend designation. So again, that speaks to the the protection piece that I was talking about a few moments ago, to where if we are considering things just on the historicity of a particular building or site, the private property ownership is kind of moot. Like it's relevant. I mean, it's there, but in my view, it we're looking at, does it meet the designation criteria? Do we think this place is important? So yeah, that's what that is. So 2C was added as a public deliberation, and I believe that Christy Anderson had looked at other commissions to try and see kind of how they dealt with this, and that's what she found, and added in to give people a public hearing aspect. And that piece, again, it is in the code that we will have a public hearing. This just kind of outlines a percentage of ownership. If we have substantial opposition, there's more than half of the people, saying they don't want it, then okay, we will hear that and consider that during our public hearing.
Okay, all right. The chair will now entertain a motion to reflect the posture of this commission regarding what Sean has said. Something we can vote on.
I make a motion to accept the bylaws as amended.
Second.
Okay, any unreadiness? All those in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. Motion carried unanimously. Appendix C, Historic District, Garden District, and South Highland Court of Draft Revised ARB Design Guidelines. Sean, you can lead us on that.
Sure. This is, again, a continuation. We are updating the design guidelines, and so this is for the blurb or description of the Garden District and South Highland Court that will appear at the back in the appendix of the design guidelines. So it's really just to give you all an opportunity if I've missed anything. A lot of this was already drafted, but I did kind of rearrange some of the sections. So if I've missed any glaring items, you all can certainly let me know, and we can add those in.
Okay. Comments? Questions? All right, thank you. Staff updates.
I have two quick updates. Vincent may wish to speak in this. We recently completed the Peacock Tract Oral History Project. The time frame for completing that was March the 31st. So all of the oral histories have been done, the draft report's been submitted. We've just requested a few changes. So far, all our drawdowns from the grant have been paid, so it doesn't seem to have been affected by recent events. We should be submitting the final claim tomorrow. Vincent was heavily involved. I don't know if he wants to say anything about it.
No, just real briefly. They were enjoyable, and I really appreciate that the community came out and started sharing their stories. And I think oral histories are a critical part as we move forward with historic preservation. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that once you start talking to people, they don't mind sharing their stories. The thing is, they've never been asked. So it does give a more valuable aspect to this work.
Okay.
And the second update is, as you know, we were awarded $75,000 for the National Register survey of Carver Park in Mobile Heights. At the moment, we are not sure if this grant has been affected by recent events. I did speak to someone in another state who also got this grant. It's an underrepresented communities grant from the National Park Service, and they're in exactly the same position as us. When the grant awards were announced, we were told we had been awarded the funding. This was back in December, but since then we've received no updates, no grant contracts, no confirmation. So this may be one of the grants that gets affected, by the recent grant cuts, but at the moment we haven't heard anything definitive. So fingers crossed, this one is still going to move ahead, but so far everyone that's been awarded this grant seems to be in the same position. We haven't heard anything yet.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, just one thing for me is that I have finally been able to get started with the South Hole site forms, working on those. There's 380 additional properties that we're looking at a potential neighborhood designation. And so I had to do a separate project where we recorded all of our ordinances and indexed them with the county probate office. So we hope that that will increase the awareness for folks when they're buying property in a local historic district, that ideally they will find, through their title search, they will find the ordinance, and then that will give them constructive notice of the regulations. So I had to get that taken care of first. It took a few months, so that's accomplished, and now I'm moving on to the site forms, and once I'm done with those, I will incorporate that into a designation report. And so with the designation committee that we have now formed, that'll be one of the primary things that we'll be looking at, right away, because it's already ongoing. So I will follow up with you all, with the committee members. I guess via email is probably the easiest way to get, everyone on board. And I'll try to schedule some times, and so we can get started. And I'm looking forward to it. I think that, these committees will be essential, and looking forward to, getting some things accomplished.
Thank you very much. Anyone has any announcements?
Everyone has a flyer for the preservation leadership, number 6, coming up next month in May, which is National Historic Preservation Month. We've got a nice lineup. We're going back to our original thought process for these seminars, which were the neighborhood histories. So each of the different Wednesday evenings we'll be talking about, a couple of the different neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods are actually bringing their histories to the class. We're organizing it, but we're looking for the neighborhood historians within the actual communities to share their stories too. So if you're interested, there's registration there at the bottom. Just let us know. Okay. It's the 4 Wednesdays in May.
Thank you very much. Anything else? The next scheduled meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission is Tuesday, June 10, 2025 at 5:30 p.m. Look forward to seeing you there. This meeting is hereby adjourned.